Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for tonight's session on rider improvements. I'm not sure what that means. Brandon Cook is AASI-E Level 3 instructor. I think we also have many other friends that joining us tonight, including Mike Ma. I'm just going to hand over to Jordan. Jordan knows everybody better than I. So, Jordan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you, Terry. So, first of all, I would like to thank you, Brandon, for joining to be our speaker for tonight. So, Brandon actually helped me to go through a lot of training, and then every Monday during the season, actually we got a chance to train with Brandon in Mountain Creek. So normally we started at night at around 7 p.m. and then we ended around 9 p.m. So it's very we were able to get a lot of exam tasks during those nights. So once again, thank you so much, Brandon. And then he is the one that helped me to improve a lot as well. So I'll hand over to Brandon.
Great, thank you, Jordan. As Terry and Jordan pretty much said, I'm Brandon Cook. I'm the staff trainer over at Mount Peter in New York, and I do night clinics at Mountain Creek on Monday nights, and hoping to maybe do something at Big Snow once the Corona pandemic thing is over. Jordan asked me to speak kind of about more or less rider improvement. Although, he wanted me to get into some of the AASI exam processes and tasks, I thought maybe we just keep it more rider improvement focused, and if people have questions beyond that, feel free to ask. I don't have a chat on my screen right now, so if something comes up, just let me know, Jordan or Terry. Does that sound good? All right, cool. Rider improvement. Yep, there we go. First of all, what's the agenda for tonight is we're going to talk about goals for ourselves and goals for potentially for our students. For me, it would be for me towards Jordan. Milestones, performance concepts, both board and body, your stance, effective versus ineffective movement, and personal improvement. Again, that's I think why we're all here, and what we're all trying to maintain or strive towards or work towards and past, right? There we go. Goals. You want to be specific. You want to make sure that they're measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So what all does that mean? If you want to learn a 1080 and you can't 180, then it might take you a couple seasons. It might not be a one season goal. If you go to summer camp and you're out at High Cascades or something like that, and you want them to teach you everything, you might want to dial it down to like, hey, what's my strong points and what can I make stronger? Stuff like that. What are you good at, and what can you then feed off of? So you want to make sure that they're measurable too, is how are you going to get the feedback as far as what your goals are? Again, if you want to do a 180 and you spin in 180 degrees, that's real easy. But with snowboarding, there's so many finer movements that happen that how are you going to get that realistic, like that timely feedback to know, hey, I am twisting my board, or I am, you know, flexing and extending, and that's stuff we'll get into in a little bit. So is it in your power to accomplish it? You know, are you picking something again that is just like, all right, I want to do a move that nobody's ever done before, and I can't do the precursor moves. Again, the 1080 versus a 180 is if I can't 540, if I can't 900, it's going to be hard to 1080. You know, I'm using this term. I'm hoping everybody is familiar with that terminology. And then again, that kind of comes into being realistic and being timely. So within your goals, let's just set certain milestones. People that are training for exams or just out riding with friends is, you know, like when I was in high school, one thing that I did was we kind of named a trick on this car ride up. We all named a trick. We're like, all right, I'm gonna do a tail grab today. Okay, I'm gonna you know what? I'm gonna do a half pipe run, all 180s, and not fall, or you know, something that we could do in the day. And that's what we did. That set our milestone. And then the next day we'd come back and, all right, cool. You know what? I'm gonna add a grab to my 180s in the pipe, or I'm gonna do whatever else. Like I'm gonna do a tail grab, and then maybe we're gonna try for a nose grab or something like that. So we're setting milestones throughout the day, throughout the season, throughout the month. Again, that kind of become measurable and make it easy for you to attain and work towards. Some of this you can do by yourself, and some of this you might need a partner or buddies with. I'm assuming we all kind of ride with a group of people rather than one person. But occasionally, you know, it's like, all right, you know, you guys go in. I'm gonna take one more or two more, skipped last, and you know, you want to work on something by yourself, or maybe you're just in your head for a moment, and it's like, all right, well, what am I working on? How am I going to get that feedback? If it's a specific movement, you'll get feelings in your body, and you'll get sensations and stuff like that, which will give you feedback. Sometimes you'll have to work on video, as far as, you know, have somebody record you or something like that, so you can get feedback. One of the biggest things that I've done is, you know, take a lesson. You know, don't be afraid to take a lesson. Is go work with somebody that potentially has a different point of view. You know, somebody that has been doing it a different way for a little bit. And that way you get a different point of view. Maybe, hopefully, they give you a couple of tasks or a couple of ideas that you can then take with you and work on over the next little bit. And it's like, oh, you know what my instructor told me, and he said to do this, and maybe that will help me out with my carving, or, you know, or my transition from my toe to my heel turn or something like that. And again, hopefully he's giving you specific drills, and those drills can just become either part of your riding, or, you know, if you don't like it, it doesn't have to become part of your riding. You know, I mean, the best part about snowboarding is it's free. It's for you. You know, it's your choice. So you can do it however you want to do it. I mean, that's how it started. We didn't, you know, there wasn't a snow sports school, and when snowboarding started, people hiked up the mountain and they dug a half pipe. That's how it started, you know. So there's really no right and wrong. You got to look at it as efficient and inefficient. So do you want to become more efficient with what you're doing, or, you know, or are you happy with what you're doing? You know, a lot of people are more than happy snowboarding how they snowboard now. So just to familiarize yourself, everybody, with a couple of different terms. These aren't the best photos, but this is something that I kind of grabbed today. Twist. You can see it a little bit in the photo. It's an upper left-hand photo. The back foot is a little bit higher than the front foot. That would be engaging. The back foot is the foot that's on the left, and the right foot toes are a little bit closer to the snow. That would be twisting your board nose to tail, just like Jordan's doing with his hands. And that helps us transition from one turn to the next, or it can help us transition. Then another board performance is tilt. That's the angle of your board versus the snow. Certain snow conditions, you can have really high edge angles. Certain snow conditions, you're going to want really low edge angles. Pivot, this isn't the best pivot picture, but if you were to think of how your board would move from that straight shot to a rail feature, and then board slide, or nose slip slide or something like that, just like Jordan's doing, yep, is how it would interact with that feature. If you were riding down the hill and you were going straight and you needed to stop immediately, you would probably pivot to your heel edge to come into that braking position. And then there's pressure, and pressure is basically how and where you're, how you're bending your board. You can pressure your nose in the beginning of the turn. You can push your board through and pressure your tail at the end of the turn. You can pressure your nose and do a nose roll. You can pressure your tail and do a tail roll. You can decamber your board. You can unweight your board. There's a bunch of different ways to pressure your board. And your body fundamentals, they're actually pretty easy. Everybody can probably figure these out anyway. It's flexion and extension. Notice in our image, the guy's really bending from the ankles and knees more than from the waist. It's kind of equal inclination from the knees, the ankles, and the hips, rather than one joint working more than the other. And rotation would be, your body rotating over your upper body rotating over your lower body. And I think Jordan's about to give us a demonstration. There you go. Yeah, almost as if you were to do those old school calisthenics of right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot, something like that, So these components, your board and your body fundamentals, every time you go out and snowboard, you're putting them to use. You hit a mogul field, you're flexing and extending. You're using pressure, you're using tilt, you're using twist, you're using rotation too. So all of this is going to feed into a little bit of what we're looking for and how we can get feedback ourselves, as well as how we can give other people feedback that we ride with. One other thing to keep in mind too is just your reference stance. If you look at these images here, the person's rather comfortable and he's stacked over his board. If you look at the dotted lines, they all kind of line up. They're nice and parallel. Nothing's twisted. Nothing's out of place. He's not over one foot or the other foot. It's, he could jump off his left foot or off his left foot or his right foot at any given moment. So, ideally, this is the ideal situation, is our shoulders are always kind of parallel to our board, and our board would be parallel to the slope. And, maybe if we want to subtract or add pressure to a certain part of our board, we're going to shift where our reference alignments are. But in an ideal situation, we're kind of stacked in that shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, snowboard kind of situation. I should say, does anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast? Does everybody kind of, I don't have chat up. We're good. Thanks, Jordan. So like I said, sorry, thirsty, got ice in my mouth. I like to think of snowboarding as efficient versus inefficient. We're all snowboarding. If you look at how people snowboarded 20, 30 years ago, it's completely different than the snowboard technology itself and what people are doing now. designs have changed, materials have changed, board construction has changed, and that's all led to make it easier for us to be more efficient on our snowboards. We can very easily twist our boards now. We can very easily decamber our boards now. If you look at old school videos of like Noah Selaznick and Mike Ranquet and stuff like that, when they would flex their nose, they would have to be so far outside of their reference alignments in order to get the board to bend that, you know, I don't know, it's just like you're on the very outside of your foot, you know. And then I don't have photos of those, but that'll give you something to Google, as Mike Ranquet or Noah Selaznick, and those are some nice old school freestylers. But what I have here is a video for you guys to watch, and it's the same pitch. It's two slightly different parts of the trail, but you can just see two different riders and how they ride through the same area of snow here.
Brandon, I think the video frame rate is a little bit low, so we kind of seeing some pictures instead of we kind of looking at slideshows instead of videos.
Yeah, all right. I know that happened the other night with another Zoom I was on. Let's just see. Let me see if I can do it frame by frame. Hold on one second. Let me see. Give me 2 seconds. Is that coming up at all, Jordan?
No, well, we're actually looking at you. We didn't see the
hold
share
on one
screen,
second.
so.
Yeah. All right. Let me just try. How's this, Jordan?
Yeah, I think it actually helps that that most people kind of turn up their video to save some bandwidth. For participants, if you can turn your video off, that actually helps sometimes.
Sorry, I couldn't, because I'm playing the video, I couldn't hear what you were saying over that.
No, that's fine. I just ask people to kind of turn their video feed off so that we can save some bandwidth for watching the video.
Hey, Brand, is there something you're looking for us? Because even in the slow frame rate, there are things that I see. Are there things that you want us to particularly hone in on as we watch these two riders? And maybe we can pick that out even with the couple frames that we're getting here and there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to show is like, I mean, obviously they're both snowboarding, right? I mean, can you argue that they're both having the time of their life right now? For where the two students are in their snowboarding, they're killing it, right? But what is the difference between the left side and the right side? And even if we look at the body positions now, we frame a couple forward, you see the rider with the red jacket. If you look at the track that she's making in the snow, right? But can you see a track in the snow with the rider in on the left side in the darker jacket? Right? So, so which one is using tilt more effectively right now? And this is where you guys can kind of chime in too, Jordan.
Right hand side.
The right hand side, right? So you're seeing a little bit better tilt there. All right. And also too, hold on, I think it's coming up here. So the rider on the left is using twist in order to get the left side of the board down the hill right now, right? But watch. Is twist really happening? Look at how flat the board is right now. Right? So flat that you can see the heel edge is actually digging down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, these, and meanwhile, if you see where I'm paused, the rider in the red, you can see her track in the snow. She's like laying a trench in the snow, isn't she?
Yeah.
And so this is a visual cue. Is like if you're working with yourself, you can look back and you can turn around and say, "Oh, cool! I made a line in the snow. I did that. I'm trying to carve, and I felt the snow against my toes, against my boots a little bit, and I look back and I can see a nice crisp line in the snow. Whereas the other rider, this might be a goal for the other rider. Is I want to be able to pick out your track in the snow. Right now, it's hard to pick out his track, isn't it? As we go through, you can see it a little bit there, but it's not really. It's just like butter and toast right now, right? Like it's just flat schmear. All right, guys? So that would be, that could be one goal for that student, is to be able to see his lines in the snow and how, and in order to be a little bit more efficient with his riding. Yeah, does anybody, I guess at this point, does anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast? Is this a little confusing, or? I work much better with a little bit of verbal feedback and questions.
I didn't see any questions in the chat, so far it seems to be no questions from the crew.
Gotcha. All right. Is this, so Jordan, since you're there, is this kind of hitting the nail on the head? Is this giving us some ideas as far as what we're doing?
Yes. So so Brandon, what's your question? I'm so sorry, I missed your question.
All right. I guess at this point, I'm just looking for a little bit of feedback from you guys. Is there any specific question? Like, I know one of the things you asked for is tasks, and if I knew like some ideas of what people were working on or working towards, I could give you guys some kind of tasks to work towards that. You know, using this video as an example, the rider on the left, I would want to play with tilt a little bit more. I'd want him to get up on his toes and see what it felt to maybe stand really tall, or on his heel edge, maybe try to get his butt into the snow or something like that in order to make more of a carved turn.
Yes, Brandon, I have a question coming up. So people is asking how to control their speed more efficiently or more effectively.
Okay, so I guess snowboarding is weird in that it's one of the few sports or activities that we do where you have to turn 90 degrees in order to slow down or stop, right? So on a hill, on the mountain, anytime that you go left or go right, AKA go across the hill, you're going to slow down to some extent, right? You might not stop, but you're going to slow down. If you're at the top and you just point the nose to the bottom and you're praying that you're going to stop at the bottom, maybe you need to change your technique a little bit and you need to make a couple of turns in between the top and the bottom. If you're having a hard time stopping on your toes, you know, it's probably either a body positioning or comes down to how much pressure you're putting along your toe edge to stop. It's kind of a vague question in that I don't really know the scenario it's used in. Ultimately, I would say that try to go across the hill more in order to control your speed. And, you know, you can always pressure the end of the turn in order to control your speed as well. So, you know, as you make your heel turn, as you finish, you're going to kind of pressure. Hold on, I'll stop my share here. So as you make your heel turn, you're going to pressure the tail, and then you'll start your new turn. And then on your toes, again, pressure the tail, and, you know, make turns that way. Hold on, I see Anna's here. So Anna's asking some tips on tilt, basically. Anna, do you wear high heels? And you can jump in here. You can take yourself off mute, or you can text me here. Do you wear high heels? Do you wear high heels? Anna?
Yes, occasionally. Hi.
Okay, so when you wear high heels, think about how your body stacks over your feet in those high heels, right? Do you, I mean, you stand, like the photos that I showed you earlier, you stand pretty upright, right? You don't, it's not like you're in this awkward, like gargoyle-like position or something like that, right? You're pretty relaxed, but you have high heels.
Yeah,
on.
starting out.
All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Think of the same thing on a snowboard. If you're on a snowboard, and if you look at a lot of beginners and people learning how to do this, as they try to pressure their toes, they bring their shoulders closer to their toes, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If you look around the mountain and stuff like that. So you kind of, by doing that, you end up spreading out your body weight. You end up pressuring, you end up putting more weight and in turn pressure over your heel edge than you really want to, rather than pushing your toes down into the snow. If you can stand up taller, actually bring your pelvis, your waist out over your knees and over your toes a little bit more, you're going to create a little bit more, you're going to have a little bit better time tilting and edging on your toe edge.
Okay, got it. I'm not sure if it's like a mental thing, but I sort of feel like my board is going faster than I want it to when I'm trying to learn to carve. Is that like a mental thing, or
Yeah.
it's just lack of control?
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely times where it's going to be uncomfortable because it's new to you, right? It's you know, it's a situation where you're learning something, and one of the actually a great here's a drill for you specifically. If you were to go across the hill, how many toe turns, you know, not complete toe turns, but how many toe turns could you make? You know, could you do like what we call garlands? It kind of looks like a Christmas garland, right? Like little U's.
Okay, I see what you mean.
W's across the hill, right? Could you do that 4 or 5 times across the hill?
Yeah, but not carving though. Not really carving. More like skidding around.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get to carving, but you know, as you start to do that, you're going to learn that control of pushing your toes down and bringing your toes up and engaging your edge, and comfort with speed and comfort with slowing down. And then you can turn that into, you know, pointing your board more downhill, right?
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. I'll give it a try. Thanks, Brandon.
You're welcome, Anna. Who's got, what's this? Tony, he asks, what are you looking for in your MA session? Body to board to turn outcome or something different? You're asking for an examiner point of view. I'm not an examiner. I am AASI level 3 certified, but I kind of have a weird way of doing this. In the AASI world and in the exam world, they have an image. Oh, I threw it away. Basically, boots up, head down, or core out. And me personally, I think I'm kind of more of a core out, whereas I see the overall picture and I figure out where you are in your riding, and I then give you feedback based on that. But that's a little bit higher level because I've been doing this for 15 years. I'd say what works better for you. I mean, for me, your feet are attached to the board touches the snow. You know, that's the obvious answer, and the easy answer is, you know, what are your feet doing, and in turn, what is your board doing? Your body can do a lot of crazy things, and it's not going to affect your snowboard. You know, not like your feet are going to do.
Brandon, I'm so sorry for the interruption. Yeah,
Oh, good.
so just give you a heads up. So Tony, he is a level 3 from Rocky Mountain Division.
Oh, perfect.
So he's also a level 3. And then also in our group chat right here, Mike Mar, he's also level 3. And also if you guys really interested in adaptive, he's the one to go to.
Yeah, I'm also on the ADSF. Hey Tony, what's up, dude?
What's up, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you. You're still as ugly as ever. Anyway.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
No,
you and me are like a brother from another mother, you know.
Let me give you my take for it. I want to build on what Brandon talked about in terms of core out and different ways to get just a broad view from, you know, level 1 is about knowledge and comprehension. If you're familiar with the Bloom levels, level 2 is about analysis. Analysis means you should be able to pick something out, right? And level 3 is about synthesis and evaluation, where you can start putting things together and then judging, you know, basically if you equate it, since I see Brandon had Star Wars on there, I always say level 1 is knowing there's such a thing as a force. Level 2 is you should be able to pick apart a lightsaber and know how to use it and deconstruct it. Level 3, you should be able to make your own lightsaber like Luke does. So what does that mean in terms of what I think about level 2 movement analysis during an MA session? I expect them to analyze. So you should be able to see a movement and pick out one board, all the stuff that Brandon talked about, which I thought was awesome. Like, what's the most important board performance, and what's the one most important movement concept? And understanding and having mastery of that says that, yep, you know how to use the lightsaber in this particular way. Common things that go kind of haywire when they're like, oh, it's twist and tilt and we're flexioning and undulating the posterior movement of the blah-de-da, and that's when you're like, you clearly don't have an analysis. You know, you should be able to just decisively say, like what Brandon showed, you know, the rider on the left, well, you know what, I'll turn this back to the group. Like, how was the board someone, and maybe I'll pick on the person that asked. Oh, I can pick on Tony since you asked it. Like, what board performance did you see on the rider on the left in Brandon's thing? What's the one most important or the most predominant board performance you saw?
I haven't seen, like, well, I kind of need to re-see that picture to kind of see it.
I
guess like my question is.
We're
Okay. I guess my question is, I just trying to understand what are, you know, different divisions do things different, right? So that's why I like to see, because, like, you know, task, you know, we're all kind of looking the same thing, but like I feel like when we get into MA and teaching, you know, like I start seeing things like happening differently.
Maybe. I mean, but the standard.
like the national standards are over there. I think every division has its own interpretation. So like I'm just here trying to understand like what is the Eastern process is like.
Sure.
So like,
Sure. I'll give you like, you should be able to analyze a movement like Brandon saw. You should tell me what's the most important board performance and what's the one most important body concept, movement concept that affects the board performance. And then you should be able to tell me what you would do with that athlete in a 5 to 7 minute program.
Okay. So that's
I mean,
pretty much like in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk more about, every examiner is going to have a different way that they run that exam and run that task, but that's the standard, like, you know, and we may, you know, you can do core in, you can do core out, you could top down, you could play a game, you could do pairs, you could do, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, the best thing, and I've, you know, but at least that's how we do on the East. When I've worked with other divisions, it generally aligns. I mean, we have all different ways of getting there based on our exam formats, terrain, and membership. But, you know, I always like, you need to the national standard is about analysis. And that means you need to be able to like look at something complex and pick up, yep, that thing is the most important thing. And this is how I retool that.
Sweet. Yeah, I don't want to take everybody's time, because like, you know, I feel like we're talking more of like instructor things than.
Oh, but you know what? But here's what it has to do. Even if you have no interest in AASI whatsoever, like if you know, just being able to coach a friend, or if you have no interest in coaching, understanding what the most important element is helps you plan a good lesson. Or like, hey, who's had this happen? Like, hey, someone give me a quick tip. Like, hey, watch my riding. What do you see? Okay, well, how do you answer that question? You need a framework to do that. And, you know, it's hard. Less is more, right? If you could say, like, look, here's the one thing, you know, there's a lot going on riding. Here's the one thing I'd love you to focus on. It's this because of this, because of that. And that's going to be a high value. That's going to be a high value program or segment. If you say it's going to be a little this, a little that, do this, do that, do that. I don't know about you, but my head explodes. So even understanding this as a general instructor or just a general citizen of snowboarding, it's a useful thing to be able to pick apart like that.
Sweet.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I definitely agree. I always appreciate your point of view too, because you know you've been in the adaptive world, and you've gone a little bit further through a lot of the processes than I have. You're out of Mount Snow. You have a great support system there too. But so thank you for your input.
Okay.
OnePlus had a question, actually had a couple of questions here. Some tips for riding on icy conditions, as well as how would you go for fear on high speed, and how to fight with muscle pain. So as far as icy conditions, you know, that's something that we just have to deal with here. A lot of that comes down to how we're stacked over the board. Think about slicing, trying to cut a tomato, right? When you cut a tomato, do you just jam a knife onto it, or do you kind of slowly draw it across the tomato to pierce the skin? I know the skin of a tomato is completely different than the surface of ice, but similar sort of thing. Whereas you want your edge to kind of graze the ice and dig into it rather than slide against it. So you're going to want a lower edge angle, and you're actually going to want to shimmy the board, not back and forth constantly, but across the ice. So from you're pressing your front foot a little bit heavy on your turn, you're going to finish with a little bit more pressure on your back foot as you're turning. So it's going back. You know, you're going across the ice like this, and then your next turn goes across the ice the other way. How to go with fear and speed. A lot of this comes down to comfort and control. It's hard to do this without seeing people's riding. One of the biggest things that we have to understand is to get from the top to the bottom, it's not a straight line. You make turns. You go left, you go right. You see a tree, you want to go jib it. You got to turn towards a tree and give it a little love tap. Maybe think about how you're riding. Is it point your nose to the bottom and get to the bottom as fast as you can? Or is it, I want to turn left and right and enjoy the conditions, and maybe I see a little bump over there, or maybe I see a nice groomed track of corduroy that I want to make some nice turns in, or something like that. Initially I would say is add in a little bit more turning. So you're going to ultimately slow yourself down. Once you've slowed yourself down and you're comfortable with the movements you're making, you can then start to add speed back into it. If you're just going super fast and you feel reckless and you don't know what your feet are doing and you don't know what your knees are doing, and you don't like how your nose and tail are gripping the snow, dial it back just a little bit and add in a little left and a little right, which I think also a lot of this comes into how you're asking about the leg and muscle pain. I'm guessing you're probably stacked a little bit more on your back leg, and you're probably getting pains from basically standing on one leg the whole time while you're going a little bit too fast. Again, if you slow down a little bit and you make a little bit more lefts and a little bit more rights, and you stack yourself over your reference alignments, you're going to be a little bit, better balanced over your feet, and you're not going to get as much leg pain or leg pain as quickly. Definitely, I know I'm in a small mountain of 400 vertical. If I go to Killington, yeah, I'm going to get leg pain because I'm out of shape. I'm not used to riding those long trails. So some of that is there too. OnePlus, if you want to just type in, does that kind of answer your questions or give you something to work with? Or if you want to unmute yourself. All right, great. Thank you. Yi asked, any tips if I wanted to start jibbing? Yeah, man. You don't have to jib in the park. If the features are too big, you don't have, that's not where jibbing is. Mike and I jib the whole mountain. If you see a barrel that you want to bonk the barrel. You see a little tree limb that like pops out into the snow a little bit, you give it a little tap. You see some inconsistencies in grooming. Maybe there's a little bit of a level change in the snow or something like that. So have some fun with that. The more comfortable you can get in a softer snow environment, the more comfortable these scary metal features are going to be. I'm not sure which mountain you ride at, but think about certain mountains have better beginner grom parks. I think Mount Snow has a really nice hikeable park on the weekends. I mean, the midweek you will have to hike it, but on the weekends I think they have a running lift. Everything's kind of low, so that's a good spot to start there. And you don't have to start with the 270 on to a board slide. Just get your board on it and go from the beginning to the end and be happy with that. It's like, you don't have to shoot for the moon right away. Khan is throwing in here that they bought a PVC pipe. You can do that too, is you can buy a PVC pipe, you can get a 2x4, whatever else. If there's specific moves that you want to do, I'm sure you could probably find a YouTube video to explain it better. But put your board on. Yeah, put your board on, step in your backyard in the grass or where, or in your apartment or whatever, and practice jumping onto the 2x4 or onto the PVC pipe. The nice thing about the PVC pipe is it is rounded, and a lot of rails now, or corrugated or whatever they end up putting in features, are round. So you can kind of practice balancing on that and then locking into that. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. And again, it goes back into what I mentioned earlier, is Don't be afraid. You know, you go to a mountain, I can guarantee every mountain has 2 or 3 instructors that are dying to teach in the park, or at least teach freestyle. And you don't have to go into the park to learn how to jib or to get a freestyle lesson. You can learn a lot on the beginner slope. So Yi, does that answer your question? Cheryl, great question. Give me a minute to get to that. Yi, did that answer your question? Anybody?
Yeah, hey, this is Z here. I'm able to do some basic stuff like 50-50, even frontside, backside 50-50. But I feel like it's really hard to step into the next level because I'm so scared just by looking at the rail. It's so narrow. I don't know if there's I wish there's a middle step between like the box and the rail or 50-50 to a higher level. I just find it's hard to overcome my fear to become to the next level.
Yeah. You know, that's tough. Some of it, I feel like you just need to get out there and do it. But now, do you wear crash pads or any kind of protective gear when you snowboard?
I do. I have pretty much everything.
Gotcha. So, I mean, the one nice thing is that you've got shin, knee. Do you have a spine protector too? No, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you've got full body armor. You know, here's a little thing about rails and features, and I'm not saying this that you go out to the next one, the first day next season, you hit it 100%. But when you look at a really long rail, the slower you go, the longer that becomes. The reason why is when you're on the rail, it takes you longer to get to the end, right? And and you're on the feature longer, and it gives you more time to make a mistake. Within reason, the faster you go, the shorter it becomes, because now you've taken a little bit more speed. So if it's a gap on, you might go a quarter of the way onto the rail before you even touch the rail. So now you have less rail to be on, and since you're traveling faster, you get to the end faster. Likewise, if you happen to fall, you might miss the feature when you do fall. So, you know, again, I'm not saying you go, you do the biggest park you can find and you take this advice and give it a shot. Definitely go from the features you're comfortable with, slightly bigger. But, you know, to an extent too, a lot of parks, yeah, you're right. Like that medium line, there is a disconnect between the small, medium, and large lines. It's not really something that I'm enjoying in snowboarding right now. I've seen a lot of, you know, like I worked at Camelback for I can't tell you how long, and they're right near near Big Boulder, who constantly got, you know, top 5 parks on the East Coast for the longest time, and trying to compete with them is like, you know, like, all right, well, we've got to put in a 65-foot jump. Well, 65-foot jump, you don't have a 10-foot jump. So who's going to hit a 65-foot jump if you don't know air control off of a 10-foot jump? It's kind of silly. You know,
can I add some stuff to this?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if people are on the AASI PSI track, there's some good stuff in the freestyle manual to manage the psychology of it. I mean, I'll give you a quick shorthand on that. It's basically using so there's definitely the physical aspects of it and picking terrain and all the things that Brandon said. I would love to add just some general psychology we talk about, which is adding cognitive behavior therapy to it, which is basically, if anyone has a dog, it's very similar. I forget the, you know, it's basically I am caring, I think is I forget the acronym, but basically it's these steps, like identify the fear, just like this skinny rails, I'm afraid of. The second is to acknowledge it. They just understand that I'm afraid, and just acknowledge, just to say that that's okay, right? The third is to manage it, right? To use some of the things we talked about, find things that are going to be low consequence, etc. However, the fourth one is the big thing, is like when you do a small bit of it, reward yourself, create a new associated emotion, right? So whether you change, like, I'm not scared after you hit one inch and slide off it. I'm not scared, I'm excited. And just say to you, I'm not scared, I'm excited. And reward yourself. Give yourself a piece of candy or a beer or something, or whatever motivates you. And just like you manage, I have a puppy, that's why I'm thinking about all this these days. You're creating a new associated emotion. And so whether you're dealing with people, and this is a common neurological technique, whether it's used to overcome stage fright, stuttering, dealing with athletes with ADHD, what you're really doing, or depression, you're creating a new psychologically associative element by not being afraid of it, identifying it, acknowledging, and that just, again, it sounds such a good, it's okay, doing the smart things to manage it. And then the last one is create a new emotion, you know, and reward yourself, or create social constructs that reward yourself around this. Like, I will only ride park if I'm pushed, right? Like, Brandon, you know, Brandon will say, hey, level 3, let's go. I'm like, all right, let's go. Or we did this with some of the crew on Thursday Night Lights. Like, I'm not the biggest park rat, but people wanted to go, so we went to the park and rode park. And even for me, I acknowledge that this was associated of emotion of creating something that I'm somewhat apprehensive. And in my mind, I've said, this is now a feeling of gratitude and excitement. And so just continuing to play with the psychology of it can augment some of the things Brandon was talking about on the physical side of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. These tips are very helpful. Thank you guys.
Yeah, the mind is powerful. Sometimes it can be a pain in the neck.
Yeah, the mind can control the body sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. You had a question about knee soreness. Can you jump in? You want to explain that a little bit?
Yes. I had a feel about my knee soreness and weakness after a trip to Jackson Hole for 3 days. And I have my knee examined. There's nothing wrong with it. And my PT just said I need like more strength on the thigh muscle. So I start doing a leg exercise. But I was wondering, is it because Jackson Hole is steep for me to ride? Is it because I try to control my speed in a not so good form that's causing I'm pushing on my knee? Or is it because my thigh muscle is not strong enough?
First of all, you're talking about your front knee or your back knee? Or both?
I feel it's in the front, but I'm not certain. It's like very light. I cannot like pinpoint the pain point.
So, all right, sorry. Is it your left knee or your right knee?
Right knee, and I'm a regular.
You're regular, so it's your back knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, that's tough. And I'm kind of curious what Mike Ma has, what input Mike Ma has as far as his adaptive knowledge. But it could be a lot of things really. Without seeing you ride, it's hard for me to give you a very specific answer. I'm tempted to say, kind of like you said, is with the steepness of the terrain, you're probably not really your bindings or your board setup, and you're probably standing on your back foot a little bit more than you're used to, and it's a little bit of muscle fatigue. But there's so many different variables to.
Yeah. So, Brandon, this is Cheryl. I'm just want to jump into this topic because it also happens to me. And also, I'm taking some rehab courses where I'm a Pilates teacher. And also, I'm doing yoga, and I'm also certified yoga teacher. So, for the back knee, like regarding to the riding, the first thing is the same. I will answer. We have to look at you, how you without seeing your movement, we cannot examine if you have any misalignment of the body part. And also like just generally for the rehab, yeah, the more strength of our leg muscles, like we will be able to like to not sitting on the joint when we bend our knee. So then, like if we don't have enough muscle, like when we bend our knee, you're crunching those joints, and also like those joints will move sideways, or like it could spin, or just have some misalignment in your body parts that cause the pain. So, well, yeah, just if the PT doesn't say anything wrong with your knee, I feel like then you're good. But just doing more exercises and will help you to survive on the big mountains.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
Can I ask some simple questions? Do you ever ride 4 days in a row straight? Where do you ride normally?
I used to ride in Seattle, and now I'm riding in Mammoth or Bear Mountain. And sometimes I do trips in Colorado. I do ride like 4 or 5 days before, and I felt okay. Yeah, that's why I'm wondering, is it because of the steep terrains that make my form in a bad form and then pushing the wrong way?
I mean, there's plenty of pitch at Crystal. There's plenty of pitch at Mammoth. There's plenty of pitch in the Front Range. Like for me, I thought, if you've never, I go to simple things before I go to complex things. Like if you ride 4 days, I mean, Jackson, you're at whatever, 6,300, and you can go up to, I think you can go north of 13,000, right? So for me, when I go out west, usually I get leg pains because I'm just riding way harder and way more intense. I'm at elevation. And then I think to Cheryl's point, sometimes I do extracurriculars at night that aren't the best recovery and end up sore. And that's different than riding 3 or 4 days when I'm at Mount Snow with just my friends and doing a regular routine versus a vacation. But I go to the simple things before, and I'm assuming, I mean, you ride big mountain, right? Do you live at elevation?
I'm not sure.
Where do you live? Where do you normally spend and breathe in air?
Oh, I'm living in California, so that's like normal.
Are you at sea level?
What's the sea level?
You live near the beach?
So I live in New York. I'm at sea level. When I go out to Jackson Hole, it's at 6,300 base elevation, and it goes up to 15,000.
Oh, I see.
Your body doesn't get enough oxygen.
I see.
You don't get oxygen, your muscles fatigue much faster, in addition to pitch. And that seems to be the variable, because if you're riding Mammoth, you got plenty of pitch, assuming you're off Eagle and other areas in there. Like, you got plenty of pitch.
Yeah, but I'm more familiar with the terrains at Mammoth because I've been there many times.
Yeah, I would just my honest guess, just to keep, if you're riding generally the same style and the same types of pitch, then you could chalk it up to some psychological strain of being at Mammoth, being at Jackson. But I really think if it's muscles, like, it's probably because I forget what's Mammoth isn't that high.
Mammoth seems to be high.
Mammoth can get pretty high, man. Mammoth is like the top of Gully.
70,
it's like,
I don't know. Yeah, then maybe it is something more physical at that time. I really, and the terrain.
Yeah, maybe we can jump into see, like, we can kind of talk about how to ride steep and see, like, maybe put more weight to the front foot and to balance on your board instead of using your back foot too much, do a lot of pivot stuff. Because normally, like if your body is pivot, like if you're pivoting your board, your body is having a rotation, and that rotation will give more pressure on your knees. And also for the oxygen level, like when your muscle get fatigued, it gets sore, your muscle get more tension to give a lot of stretch to the tendon, which is the parts closer to your knees. So it's your muscles squeeze, your glue muscles, I mean glue and hamstrings and those leg muscles, they squeeze together, but they are pulling your tendon close to your knees. That might cause the pain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for the information, guys.
You're welcome.
And Cheryl.
You know, not one last thing too is that, yeah, is if you do, you know, next time you're out at Jackson or wherever, is take a lesson. Oh shoot, my lesson. Take a lesson and see what they're pointing out. Anything.
Okay.
You know. Yeah, or you're in Keystone, you can take a lesson.
Okay.
I'm over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but get a good instructor, okay?
Okay. See you guys on the mountains.
Who else? Oh, Cheryl had a great question about, Cheryl, can you just jump on and explain that? Less rotation at the upper body. Any specific time or?
Yeah. So actually, it's a very interesting question because when I first starting working on any freestyle stuff, I had difficulty on the rotation of the upper body. It's like when I jump off, it's separate from the waist, and my shoulder didn't follow the board. And remember the other day we saw a video from Amy where she's doing the front three, and we were talking about this, but I feel like is it a common issue for a female rider? Like we kind of like our legs is going with the board, but because the core muscles or something is not that stronger enough, so our shoulder isn't follow with it. Or also like when we're doing three or maybe some, I'm not doing five, but I'm talking about the threes, is do I need to like to open the body a little bit and using the counter rotation, or it's a bad habit?
I don't remember. So remember last time we went to Big Snow? There's the three kind of yagoons that were riding the mountain. There's two boys and one girl.
Yeah.
Two male, one female. Do you remember any time the girl hit the jump, she would do a 180? Do you remember that?
Actually, it's too far away, but just tell me.
So she was doing basically what you're describing. Is anytime she hit the jump, she would do a 180. She would basically use her hips to start that rotation and do the rotation. And it's actually a pretty common thing. Men and women have different centers of mass. And women's centers of mass is a little bit
close
lower.
to the, yeah.
And kind of what it causes is actually Burton did a super clinic for instructors a little bit ago, and they referred to it as chick hip. Like if you think of the girls at the club standing waiting in line with their hand on their hip, and they're like their hip kind of out. They kind of like thought it would be kind of funny and cute to call it chick hip and with that description there. But basically it is a pretty common thing. If you watch a lot of female riders, they do rotate lower in their body, and it's just something that you kind of I mean, if there's something specifically you want to work on, again, that's easier to do on snow than it is over a Zoom meeting. Yeah, I mean, I know almost every female athlete that I've worked with in snowboarding has probably rotated with her hips first.
So do we want to train, like, do we want to train like to force our shoulders to follow with the hips?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you still want the reference alignments to be there, right? You still want to stay stacked. In your analogy of Amy, if you watch when she rotated, I mean, everything still stayed stacked. Like her shoulders, her hips, her knees, her feet, they're all still, over themselves. And as they came around, in fact, her backside, she led with her head, right? She looked over her right shoulder, and then she rotated. Meanwhile, in her front side, she stopped her head, and her hips continued, and that's what kind of slowed that rotation for her there. I don't know. It's hard for me to answer without seeing you ride, and have a very specific situation to base it off. If you want to do a 180, basically, let's just make it this simple. If you want to do a 180 and you're having a hard time noticing that your hips are rotating and your shoulders and your head aren't, then yes, you're going to have to start to train your body so that your shoulders, kind of lead that movement. But, if you're talking about, when you're riding in general, I mean, I would argue many times your hips are going to lead this movement anyway. Your ankle's going to collapse, your knee's going to go into the turn, and then your hip's going to go into the turn. So, it's very situational as far as when and where. Does that make sense, Cheryl?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm just a little bit confusing. Like, when we talking about riding, we always say shoulder above hips, like that's how we center. And then we go into the freestyle. I do see some freestyle training videos, like some of the tricks that you need the counter rotation. So I think it's hard to know when to use it or when not.
Yeah. And again, it becomes very situational. If you're talking like, board slides, front side and back side board slides, your upper and your lower body are going to be separated, right? If you're talking a 50-50, then everything should really be in the same plane, right? And that's all freestyle movements there. If you're doing a 180, it probably doesn't matter if your hips or your shoulders are leading the turn. But if you want to get to a 360, a 540, a 720, stuff like that, then you're probably going to you're going to have to change your movements so that, you're going to have to tighten your core to create the pop, to, keep your arms in to create the rotation. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty good advice here for now. Yeah, maybe next season we can just ride together and see how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully this summer. Any other questions? All right, Cheryl, I'm sorry if that didn't really answer your question too. Yeah.
No, I was doing some trick because we did get a trampoline during this quarantine, and I trying to use the tramboard and practice some 360s. But I do feel like I have like I don't know. It's like I don't know where to look at for the front race, and then I noticed my back arms swing out. So I think, my shoulder didn't follow me.
Right. So if you think of ballet, right?
Yeah.
A ballerina, her arms aren't out. They're in tight to her body, or they're up, or whatever else, right? And you'll notice that as they draw their arms out and in, they can slow and speed up their rotations, right?
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, as you're rotating, well, one, you want to make it look really steezy, so you want to grab in there so your arm's close to your body, but really your arms are moving close to your body to help you with the rotation. And I'm looking at the computer as I'm doing this, but it would be, like you kind of wind up, like like kind of running stance here. You wind up, your arms go, and then you look into the rotation. Cheryl, if you want to send me video, I'd definitely give you feedback on your video on the trampoline. But
yeah, sure. I didn't catch good videos today, but when I got it, I will send it to you. Then we can go from
yeah, no problem.
And I appreciate it.
You know where I am. So
I appreciate your help.
yeah, no problem. Anytime.
Brandon, do you still have time? Because it's almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean,
Brandon.
If there's any more questions, I can definitely feel free to field more questions or answer as best I can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Are there any other questions? Hopefully I gave you guys kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great, Brandon. This is Terry. I actually have a question, because for many of us, we actually don't have the kind of readily availability to our kind of trainer. So most of the time we just have to do it by ourselves. So I think you might have seen kind of situations like this before. So from a trainer's perspective, so what would you suggest for people that maybe cannot see a trainer for maybe 2 or 3 weeks in between?
I mean, it kind of depends on what you're working on. Hey, I'm going to go to a black screen. I keep getting unstable internet here. My internet provider sucks, so I'm just going to stop my video. So hopefully you guys can hear my audio. Again, going back into the goals that I put up earlier is think about what makes sense. If you watch people on the chairlift and you see somebody that you feel is better than you, right? Well, start to look at them and say, well, what are they doing? What makes them look better than I feel, right? What are they doing that I feel like I'm not doing? And in turn, you have to take those feelings, those sensory feelings, and say, okay, well, I think that they're bending their front knee more than I'm bending my front knee. Okay, so what are the feelings I can get in order to give me the feedback that I'm bending my knee more, right? Oh, you know what? I've never noticed the tongue of my boot against my shin. And now I'm noticing it today. Wow, I must be bending my knee more because my knee's further over my toes, which in turn I'm collapsing my ankle more. Wow, so now you're starting to give yourself feedback. Another thing is, I kind of talked about the track that the rider in the red jacket made on the snow. How often do you look at your tracks in the snow? I mean, do you just like race to the bottom and stand in a lift line again? Or do you ever stop for a moment and turn around and be like, damn, I made some really awesome turns in the snow there. Look at those tracks.
Yeah, sometimes I do that, but I don't know, sometimes kind of the tracks always looks good. I don't know why. Even when I'm not feeling that well, I mean, maybe I just need to kind of train my eyes a bit better.
Yeah. And then, the biggest thing too is do you purely ride by yourself, or do you ever ride, or are you at least riding with one other person?
Yeah, that's the issue. My situation was probably kind of more special, but I usually have to ride by myself and practice by myself. So without the luxury of a company, that makes things even harder. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is right. that is harder because you don't have the ability to video yourself. Like, you know, you can't have your buddy video you for a run or something like that. That makes it tougher. What mountain do you ride at?
I ride at Wachusett Mountain.
What mountain do you ride at?
Wachusett, outside of Boston.
Wachusett, awesome, cool. Yeah, so I know a bunch of great instructors there. What is it that makes you feel like you can't take a lesson with any of them?
No, I'm actually an instructor. I'm an instructor too, but it just kind of over the weekend is tough because everybody's busy teaching a lesson, and so when sometimes I actually go out there during the week, like we actually have night skiing, night snowboarding, but at that time it's kind of we don't have that many instructors, especially the good ones hanging around at night. So that makes it.
Yeah. Well, what about Nicole or Julie or other Julie?
Yep, Nicole and Julie is great. Great. Just kind of sometimes hard to kind of grab them during busy hours.
Yeah. No, I mean that's understandable too. You know.
Hey, Brandon, can I speak into that for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, I'm Lauren. I work as a trainer at Greek Peak in New York, and I also worked as the ski and snowboard school manager in Washington State at Stevens Pass. I would say that when you guys are going in for lessons, don't be afraid to let the ski school know exactly what you're looking for and exactly the kind of coach that you're looking for. They might not have the coach that you need at that time, but if they didn't meet all of your expectations, absolutely do not hesitate to let a supervisor know, either in person or via email afterwards, and any ski school would make it right for you. So if you're going in at night and you're afraid they don't have the instructor for you, give it a shot anyways. If it didn't meet your expectations, just let them know and they will get you in for another lesson.
Sure, sounds great. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Terry, if there's a safe spot where you could hide a camera on the mountain and you can just do a couple of passes on that and pick up the camera in a run or two. I mean, at least you could, you know, like, I mean, if I were you, you say you work at Wachusett, I mean, I would just talk to Nicole early season and say, hey, this is something I want to work on. And like, you know, when do you think you'd be able to make time for me? You know, and if she can't, then, you know, see if Julie or somebody else can. I mean, I can guarantee there's somebody there that's going for a level 2 or a level 3, and just make sure you're communicating well as far as like, these are the nights I'm available, who's available these nights, you know? I mean, you know, like George mentioned, Monday nights. Monday nights I do Mountain Creek. You know, I try to make it work, and you know, maybe you can find people locally there. That Dylan Sanford works there occasionally. I'm not sure how much he's there right now, but you know, grab him. Hey, Dylan, what night of the week is good for you? If he says Thursdays, then make Thursdays good for you too. You know, I mean, you know, you're in a little bit different situation in that you're at least an instructor. So while you are riding by yourself, you have other tools and other outlets, but you know, don't be afraid too. Like, hey, it's the weekend. You know what? I'm going to go to Mount Snow and I'm going to take a lesson at Mount Snow, you know, and maybe it costs you a little bit extra, but you know, are you certified?
Yes.
Terry?
Brandon, so Terry went sideways. Terry, he is PSIA level 3 skier, level 1 snowboarder. That's why he spent most of his time skiing instead of snowboarding. His question is actually regarding trying to help those people who do not have that much access to instructors, so that they could train. What would be a plan for those people who want to train by themselves?
I mean, it just, you know, at a certain point, you're going to need some, I do. Sorry, I understand the question is, at a certain point, you're going to need some sort of outside feedback. You know, if it's initially you take a lesson or you ask a buddy or something like that, you're gonna need some sort of outside source to give you the information of like, hey, I think you should do X, Y, and Z. Once you've figured out what X, Y, and Z is, you're gonna have to come up with ways to train your body. Go home, grab a mirror, and say, okay, I was asked to get lower at the knees. How do I do that? And flex and extend in front of the mirror at home, and see, how do I do this? And what looks comfortable? What looks right? What looks like the guy on the chairlift? You know, when I'm on the chairlift and I'm looking at people, what looks? How do I look more like that guy?
Yep. Yep. Thanks.
You know, so you're gonna have to. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just saying that. Yeah. Even though that I'm an instructor and many people on this session are not instructors, but what you just said to me actually applies to most other people too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can tell you, even as an instructor, I take lessons constantly. I mean, at least once a year, I'm in some sort of event to work on something, and the nice part is I always get something out of it. Then it's all on me to take that back to my home mountain and work on it. Maybe sometimes it means that I bring a notepad and I'm actually making physical notes, or it's like like I'm trying to get a feeling or a sensation out of the lesson that I can take back and work on that feeling or sensation. You know, I mean, you got to think of this a little bit like, you know, how would a blind person see the world? You know, like, because in this scenario, you're kind of blind. You're not able to see what you're doing so much. You're going to have to feel it. You're going to have to, you're going to have to pick up some auditory cues in the snow and stuff like that, or feel some kinesthetic cues in your body, you know?
Yep.
But somebody's going to have to give you basically some sort of goals to work towards, or some sort of feeling to work towards, you know? So, you know, it's really hard and really vague to just give you a blanket, like work on these 3 things or 5 things or 10 things. But if I were to see you ride, yeah, I could definitely give you a couple of things to work on, and then you could work on that by yourself.
Sure.
Again, the biggest thing that I think people could do if you're choosing not to go out with an instructor is to just ride the chair and look down and see, even look at the instructors. Wow, that instructor looks great. How does he do what he's doing, or how does she do what she's doing? And then try it. I noticed that they tried to do this first. I'll try to do that first, you know? And maybe it comes down to a little bit more twist in their board, or a little more tilt in their board, or a little bit more pressure on their nose, or a little bit more pressure on their tail. Think about the board performances, the body performances I showed you. Man, they look great in the bumps. What did they do in the bumps? Oh, there's a little bit of rotation in their body so that they could see where they're going, or, you know, upper lower body separation, stuff like that. But at some point, yes, you're going to need a buddy. You're going to need a pair. You're going to need somebody to kind of to bounce an idea off of.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Brandon. I'm not sure. Do you have like a
Does that
few?
help, Terry?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I see that there's one more question. Do you have 1 more minute to answer that, Brandon?
Yeah, sure. I don't see any. What's the question? I don't
Yeah,
see
this I see Eve has her hand raised, but she's texting to me that her audio has problems.
any.
So
Okay.
her question is how to make stronger pop in the jump.
Okay.
That's her question.
Stronger pop in a jump. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, there's a couple. So this comes down to a lot of different things. Are you on a reverse camber board, or are you on a multiple camber board, or are you on a cambered snowboard? You know, what is it what is it that you're doing now that you don't feel like you're getting strong pop? Are you jumping off of both feet, or are you starting to think about, if you're on a skateboard, you can't jump on both feet, right? You have to kick down the tail and you have to bring up your front foot in order to ollie, right? Let me see if I can put that on video.
Yeah.
So if you're on a skateboard, let me get rid of the stupid background. So if you're on a skateboard, right, you're going to push down with your back foot and move up with your front foot, right? Here's your feet. You're going to push down and you're going to rock, right? So it's like, so you want to get that timing of that movement down. If you are hitting a jump and you don't have that timing right, and you're just riding right off the jump, just like that, then there is no pop, is there? But if you come to the end and your front foot gets the lip here, and then you're pushing down, now you're creating pop. So to answer your question, how do you get more pop? Some of it comes down to the timing of the movements you're making, and a lot of it comes down to what movements are you making or aren't you making. You want to make efficient movements rather than inefficient movements. And depending upon which snowboard you're riding, it might be harder if you have a reverse camber board, or if you have a cambered snowboard, you might get that pop out of the board that you're looking for. Does that answer your question? Was that
yeah, that helps a lot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you first. So I wonder, so sometimes I saw a lot of guys, they just when they do the jump, they jump so much easier than women. So I want to know if that's a physical thing that the men's can do the jump much more easier than women, or. And the second is you just mentioned the timing. So it looks like I was not get to the right point when I was do the jumping. So you refers to when you want to jump higher, you have to be like push. When you hit the lip, you have to do the push at that time. But when I was doing the jumping, actually I pushed the. I was much earlier than what you just said. So right. Maybe that's a good tip and good drill I should be focused on.
Yeah. And where do you ride, Eve?
What do you mean?
What mountain do you snowboard at?
I hold a icon pass, so I usually ride the eastern coast, those mountains.
Awesome. So you've got a slew of great snow sports schools and a slew of great parks that you can ride. So, like Icon Pass is Killington. If you're ever looking for a great park lesson, request Forrest Baker. He's a local. He's awesome. And he's definitely would work with you. As far as guys popping more than girls, I think there's a little bit of social difference there, whereas guys are just stupid and we just don't care, and we're more willing to throw our body in weird awkward positions, and I think women are just a little bit more hesitant. It doesn't mean it's true for everybody, but I think this is something that guys have been doing since they were 16, so to speak, and so it just kind of comes natural to them. You expect a guy to snowboard, you expect a guy to skateboard, you expect a guy to ride a dirt bike. It's not really the norm for women to do that. But I mean, Lauren jumped in here earlier, and I know she does all that too. So it's not that it can't be done, but.
I see.
Yeah, hey, Brandon, I found that when it comes to pop and things like that, this is for snowboarding and mountain biking, I found, is that with women, we tend to be a little bit more graceful, like you were kind of alluding to. And I think that it's a bit of a stronger motion than what we're really planning on having to do. So once you find that pop and that strength in your legs that you have, but probably aren't utilizing yet, you can get that pop a lot more easily. It's just a bigger motion than what you're expecting it to be, which isn't necessarily as natural for a woman as it is for a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is there anything else? Any other questions? Or Eve, does that answer your question a little bit better?
Yeah. I will be more focused on the timing thing, and maybe get another board, another board shape. Now I'm riding. It's not camber, so it's a hybrid camber, and
right. Don't get me wrong. Don't take my information and say, "Oh, my snowboard's bad." Personally, I ride rocker and I ride hybrid camber. I love both of them. In fact, I love the surfy, skatey feel of a reverse camber board. But I also know how to pop that board. So don't take that as the be all end all answer. Some of it is probably more timing. And even, like I said, if you have a reverse camber board, it could be the timing of how you're doing it with the reverse camber. Just, it's like a double negative for you, you know? When we end, if you were to YouTube video on how to ollie, I'm sure there's a couple of different YouTube videos on how to ollie and how the motions of how they do it and when they do it, and bringing up, my hand will be your feet here is, it's like bringing up the front foot, pushing down, and then bringing up the back foot, kind of like if you're on a mountain bike, popping a wheelie and then pushing the bars and the back wheel up off the ground. So that kind of movement, rather than both feet off the ground at the same time. Some people have even taken it more towards the skateboarding realm of pushing the front foot into the front binding a little bit more. So it's, when you push down, it's up and you're pushing out like this as you're pushing down with your back foot. So it's like that. Sorry, the background's a little funky. I'm sitting in a dark room.
Nice.
But I would suggest, I like to kind of prefer that people stick with what they have, try to change the timing first, and if you find that your equipment's failing you, then look into equipment, but don't buy equipment as an answer. Equipment's not going to, it's not, oh, well, this is the best. Got to buy the best to be the best. Nah, I can tell you there's plenty of awesome riders on really bad equipment.
Right, that's true.
So I hope that answers your question, Eve.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Jordan or Terry, any other questions? I don't see anything in chat.
I don't see anything in chat either. Terry, have anything?
No, I think that's all the questions that I see right here. This is great discussions. Love it, and much better, even better than we have expected. Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you guys later.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
大家如果对二级的那个基本的